you very much, guys. The first time I saw Ken, I was standing on a stage in my hometown in Calgary, in Canada, and his nose had obviously been recently broken, and I listened in as he told the story of an ill-fated backflip on a dance floor at his best friend's bachelor party. And he was telling this to another camp counselor because I was at camp and I was 12 and Ken was 22. Yeah. With all of my 12-year-old heart, I fell immediately and desperately in love with Ken. For the next little while, Ken took me under his wing and he became my mentor. He introduced me to my home throughout my teenage years, which was Loose Moose Theatre, which is an improvisational theatre in Calgary, a very well-known one. And throughout that time, you know, he pushed me to do shows, pushed me to do kids shows, to do all the shows. You know, he made sure I had safe rides home, and he would glare at the boys who were breaking my heart, and he would, you know, he would also just be very kind to me, you know, in all that time. And I mean, I don't want to give this the wrong impression. This was not a Lolita type relationship, you know, despite my best efforts. I worked very hard at it, but he kept a wide berth of my clear adoration, and you know, he made sure also that he told me to pull my head in when I was acting like a brat. That was also one of the main things he did for me. All of this was during my teenage years, so it was done to a backdrop of Pearl Jam and Radiohead, you know, yeah, Smashing Pumpkins. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio was like Romeo, Claire Danes was Juliet. It spoke to me like nothing else, you know? Yeah. I was not popular in school. Surprise. And you know, I wasn't in with the cool crowd. I was in the crowd called the Dirties. Yeah, that's what they call us, the Dirties. Because we wore op-shop clothing. I mean, we would be called hipsters now, but back then we were Dirties. That was before it was cool. I was a hipster before it was cool, guys. Just want to say. So it was back then, and that was fine. I didn't want to be a part of this cool group because these girls all wore way too much makeup. And they would say things to my English teacher like something like the lumpy space princess from Adventure Time, right? Like they would be like, "Oh my God, like Mr. Bobby, like why doesn't Shakespeare just talk English, you know? Because like I totally don't understand him." I did not want to be involved with that. Not at all. So I was fine with it because I had my theater and I had Ken. In my heart, I did. So around the time where I was graduating, maybe about 6 months before I graduated, Ken went to Australia to do some shows. Not to get away from me, but just to do some shows with some friends. And while he was away, my best friend at the time, she started doing this new thing where she was like talking on a chat room in this cool new technology called the internet that everyone was really excited about at the time. But I didn't know anything about this. This was before anyone knew how to email. It was before Google was a verb. It was before Facebook was existed, you know, and for sure, only losers were meeting people on this internet thing, like for sure. And so I was telling her that she was in real danger of becoming one of these losers, and she was going to be on Jerry Springer. Totes. And she said, "Look, you can't knock until you try it." So one night I was bored, and I went on, and you didn't even have to sign up and shit. You just wrote a name in, right? And if no one else was using that name, you could use it, right? You could. And so like it was GeoCities was the name of this, and woo! Yeah, so like I'm on GeoCities, and all you have to do is type your name, right? So I type in the name, and I'm still fucking embarrassed about it. The name I typed was Angel. It was the fucking 90s. It was just a mess, right? A mess. So I find myself myself in GeoCities, and I find myself in the midst of this Shakespeare conversation. And I say in the midst of it because I could not participate because I did not know how to type fast enough, right? But the guy who was leading this discussion about Hamlet, he was Australian. And I was like, I definitely want to be talking to this guy because there is a really real possibility that Ken could be sitting directly next to him. It was like that close, right? So I started talking to him, and it turns out we ended up talking for 7 hours that night. 7 hours. And the next day I went to work, and my best friend called me, and she was like, there's this Australian guy asking for you on GeoCities. So I was like, and we ended up progressing. I ended up learning how to email, right? And so we started emailing, and he was 2 years older than me. He was going to uni. And I thought he was so smart and so cool. And we ended up starting to talk on the phone. And my phone bill was more than my fucking rent, right? It was, because like Skype was not invented. So I was talking on the phone and I wasn't eating because I was talking to him. And instead what I decided, I was gonna go for a gap year after I graduated. I was gonna go for a gap year to Greece. And instead of doing that, I decided clearly the next thing to do was go to Australia to meet this mysterious guy, right? And I say mysterious because he refused to send me pictures of himself that were not from junior high. Okay, yeah. So this also raised a few red flags with my friends. Okay? And they held an intervention. And I was like, no guys, this is my adventure, right? And during this time, Ken had actually come home from Australia, and he knew how stubborn I was, so instead of saying anything, he just handed me a sheet of paper with a bunch of names and phone numbers on it for when things inevitably went really fucking wrong. But he didn't say anything, didn't stop me from going. Around this time, it was my prom. I was going to be leaving a few weeks after my prom, and Ken agreed to go to prom with me because my boyfriend was in Australia, right? So Ken brought me to prom. So we bought the tickets, and I bought the dress. I decided I was going to dress up. It was prom, it was a big deal, so I was going to wear a dress, I was going to do my hair, I was going to wear makeup. So I did, and the first person I saw walking into prom was Lumpy Space Princess. And she comes up to me and she's like, oh my God, Jasmine, like, why didn't you dress like this, like, all year? And I looked at her, and like, her thick makeup and her ginormous poofy lips, like, I didn't have the heart to tell her she looked like a bowling ball with eyes, you know? It wasn't pleasant. Anyway, so Ken and I tore up the dance floor. We like nailed it there. Like, we were so excited. We were dancing. We were the only ones, but it was fine. We were the only ones dancing. And after prom, we decided instead of going to a prom party, we were going to just go to a pub, and it was just going to be me and Ken. And we went to the pub, and it was like 3 hours of us just sitting and talking. It was like the first time that Ken was treating me like an equal and treating me like someone, you know, that he wanted to talk to, and like he wanted to hear what I had to say. And it was so amazing. And at the end of the night, he drove me home, and he leaned over and he hugged me goodbye, and he kissed me on the shoulder, and he whispered in my ear, maybe if things don't work out between you and mysterious Australian boy, maybe something could happen here. And my 12-year-old heart exploded in excitement, right? And I did what anyone would do for their love of their life. And they're finally saying these words. I ran out of the car and I ran inside because I was fucking terrified, okay? I was terrified. And I knew I had to go. I'd made this huge big deal about going to go see this guy from Australia. I had to go, right? So I was like, no, it's okay. You know, treat him mean, keep him keen. Ken will always be there. Really. And so I decided, no, I'm gonna go into Australia, I'm gonna meet this guy, this is my adventure, right? This is my adventure. And so before I left, I'd said to this guy, okay, I'm going to Sydney, he was from Brisbane, I'm going to Sydney. If I'm gonna come all the way over, you know, from across the world, I think that what you could do is just maybe drive down to Sydney and meet me. And that was a reasonable request. And I'm gonna be wearing a blue dress, and he had to be holding up a sign that said Jasmine, because I didn't know what he fucking looked like, okay? Gotta hold up the sign. So I said, okay, and so this was all agreed upon, it was all fine. And so I really felt like totally confident in this interaction. I was like really excited about this meeting, right up to the point where the pilot said, we are now beginning our descent into Sydney. And then I went, who the fuck let me do this? This is a terrible mistake. adventure. This is gonna end in a fucking horror movie, you know? Like, I'm definitely going on Jerry Springer after this. This is what's happening, right? But it was too late. I had to walk out the fucking gate, right? I had to walk out the gate anyway, so I was gonna do it. And so I wore my blue dress, and I walked out the gate, and I saw this guy standing there, and he was holding a sign. I couldn't read the sign, but he was holding a sign, and I thought to myself, if this is what I came all the way across the world for, it was a big mistake. It was a mistake. I was like, this is not good at all, right? Luckily, he was just a limo driver, and he did not appreciate my subtle, worried looks. So, my mysterious guy was not there. He was not anywhere to be found. And so I wandered around the airport. It was 6:45 in the morning, so it was very, very, like, empty. And there was no one there. There was a guy standing outside who was smoking. It was kind of cute, but it wasn't him. And so I was like, that's a bummer. Anyway, so I wandered around, and I started to panic. And people I'd met on the plane who were pretty, like, they were really excited about this exchange as well, right? Like, they wanted to see it go poorly, but they wanted to see it, right? They wanted tickets to that show, you know? So they were all standing there, and they're like, you know, it's okay, Jasmine, it's fine. What's going to happen is we're all going to go to the hostel. If you want to come with us, we'll just figure it out tomorrow. And I knew that if I didn't see him then, I was never going to see him. He didn't live in Sydney, and I was going to be way too pissed off to go to Brisbane and find him, right? Except to maybe, like, punch him. I'd be like, that's why I would go. But if he was going to stand me up in the Sydney airport, I wasn't looking for him. So I said, okay, look, I'm going to come with you guys, but I'm just going to take one more look around. Okay, just one more look. And so I started walking away, and I turned the corner, and the guy I'd seen outside smoking sees me, and he stands up, and he holds up a sign, and it says Jasmine. And I walk closer to him, and I look at him, and I say, yep, that's me. But I came out of that gate way over there. And the first thing that my husband of now 15 years, father of my 2 children, ever said to me was, I fucked it up already.